The top 10 exercises to train your gluteus medius. Subscribe to my channel. Banded knee barbell hip thrust. Knee barbell hip thrust is the best exercise to increase the gluteal muscle strength and size as a whole. It is a hip extension movement that is primarily done by the gluteus maximus. However, the gluteus medium still gets significant activation, with studies showing an average activity of 47 to 60% MVIC7 depending on variation. Good to know, MVIC stands for maximum voluntary isometric contraction. This is a quantitative measurement of the amount a muscle is contracting relative to its maximum ability. MVIC reading is obtained by the use of electromyography, EMG. It is a useful way of measuring the effectiveness that an exercise has on the intended muscle. By adding a fabric resistance band around the knees, we can further increase the activation of the gluteus medius by forcing them to perform hip horizontal abduction to keep the legs out. Side plank with abduction. The side plank with abduction is the best bodyweight exercise to target the gluteus medius. It is incredibly easy exercise to perform as it requires no equipment and can easily be added to a home workout. In fact, this simple exercise has been shown to produce higher muscle activity than any other exercise. Side plank with abduction can produce from 89 to 103% MVIC8, dependent on whether the dominant leg is on top or bottom. Either way, that is higher than any other exercise. Side lying abduction. The side lying abduction is very similar to the side plank with abduction, except it is done on your side. This makes it a great exercise for the general public or rehab exercise, as taking out the plank makes it significantly easier to perform. However, it still gives a killer gluteus medius workout and generates 62% MVIC8. This is a great exercise to do at home, as you only need your body weight or some hip bands to increase the load. Single limb squat. Remember earlier when we talked about the importance of the gluteus medius in supporting the body when on one leg? This is what we're talking about. When performing a squat with one leg, you take an already great exercise for the glutes and enhance its effectiveness for targeting the gluteus medius. This is due to the sheer amount of force they must produce in order to keep the hips from sagging and maintaining frontal plane control. One problem is that a single leg squat requires high levels of strength to perform. But don't worry, as there are 3 variations that you can choose from dependent on your training level. Perform with full range of motion. Perform with partial range of motion. Perform with some form of support or straps. Perform with a box or bench as seen in the picture above. Depending on what method you use, expect to reach up to 82% MVIC9. Single leg wall sit. The single leg wall sit can be used as a standalone exercise or as a progression towards the single leg squat. The mechanisms are exactly the same, except you will be performing a wall sit on one leg. While not as effective as a full squat, you will still get 52% MVIC8 gluteus medius activation. Front plank with hip extension. A front plank with hip extension also takes advantage of the gluteus medius's role in controlling hip stability. This glute exercise begins in the plank position. You then lift one leg up, with the knee bent, as high as you can go, which will cause extension of the hip, pulling the leg backward. The side with the leg on the ground will be responsible for maintaining frontal plane control, which will require 75% MVIC8 from the gluteus medius. This is an impressive number in its own right. Still, this movement has also been found to be able to cause the highest activation of the gluteus maximus at 106% MVIC. Yes, this is an article for the gluteus medius. However, if you can train both of these muscles simultaneously to such a high degree, you should definitely do them. The front plank with hip extension is the best exercise when looking at total activation in both the gluteus medius and gluteus maximus. Clamshell. We talked about this exercise earlier with the banded hip thrusts. Clamshells get the name as they resemble the opening of a clamshell when performed. Makes sense. With this glute exercise, you lay on your side with your knees bent out in front of you at 90 degrees and ankles together. You then externally rotate your hips to open your legs while being short to keep the ankles together. When performed correctly, you can get up to 76% MVIC8. To get the most significant activation, use a resistance band that allows you to open your legs to at least 60 degrees 10. Hip bands like our fabric resistance bands would work great. Frog pumps. Frog pumps look like a cross between a clamshell and a glute bridge. To perform frog pumps, you lay on the ground with your knees bent and hips externally rotated so that your knees are spread open. You then thrust your hips, hip extension, into the air, like a glute bridge. This will activate the gluteus medius from the abduction and external rotation of the hips. There are multiple ways to perform this exercise: body weight only. Use of a dumbbell in the crease of the hips to increase the load on hip extension. Use of a light band on the knees to increase the load on hip abduction, this hits the gluteus medius. Use of a dumbbell and band. Lateral step up. Lateral step-ups will evoke 58.7% mvk of the gluteus medius and are extremely easy to do. Instead of a traditional step-up with your feet facing an elevated surface, lateral step-ups have you facing perpendicular to the stairs. This causes an increase in hip abduction and control of the frontal plane as the leg must lift the body up and to the side. This can be done as a bodyweight exercise only or while holding weights. Single leg deadlift. The single limb deadlift offers a significant mvk at 56% mvk. The reason it doesn't get as high of reading as a single leg squat is largely due to the need for control of the frontal plane. The single leg deadlift is a hip hinge movement that involves more of a swinging motion of the body forward and involves less of a drop in the hips. While the single leg deadlift may not be the go-to movement for the gluteus medius, don't ignore it. One advantage it has over many of the other gluteus medius exercises is that it is significantly easier to add a higher load. Subscribe my channel and press the bell icon for new video update.